Inside the business class section of the plane, bloodied corpses surround the cloth mask assassin from earlier. Mizuno, the proctor who took out Kill Baby, is currently in his grasp by the throat. This cloth mask assassin's name is Mafuyu Seba, and if you've been paying attention throughout the story, you might have just realized the connection to this character immediately, but let's just stay quiet right now for those who haven't picked up on it. Mafuyu, clearly bloodlusted, despite already achieving his bullets, reminds Mizuno she did tell him he's allowed to kill her for these. But just before that interaction continues, Shin throws a kick in Mafuyu's orbit, knocking him to the other side of the plane. Mafuyu tells the old man to stay out of this, despite Shin only being 21, and even more surprisingly, Mafuyu is only 14 himself. Which, 1, impressive, they're both young and strong, but 2, it also explains many of the events to come considering neither of their frontal lobes are developed. Mafuyu has the weapon advantage with his handgun and is quick enough to outpace Shin in moments, just barely missing a shot at Shin's shoulder and just grazing him. This prompts Shin to worry how a teenager is so battle-hardened, but before Shin can even let that question sit, Mafuyu snaps to being on the verge of a panic attack, losing all focus almost instantly as a speck of Shin's blood splattering onto his face from that gunshot. Reminiscent almost of a parts OCD, except getting in the way of Mafuyu killing effectively as opposed to being the main driving force behind it. Shin is rightfully caught off guard, but he's more so intrigued by how someone this affected by germs can pretend to act so confident. Mafuyu complains that he would already be enrolled in JCC if his older brother, wink wink nudge nudge, didn't give him the flu and make him miss the initial exam. Mafuyu's apparently missed his chance to make friends or fit into social hierarchies, despite, again, I just want to remind everyone this is a school to train assassins for killing people, not your average, high school prom here. Mafuyu is annoyed by all of this and plans to take all this teenage angst out on Shin as he pulls a cord from his heel, revealing 2 large blades behind Mafuyu's feet. And before Shin can even acknowledge these blades' existence, they're already inches away from his face, intending to split his head wide open. Shin ducks as Mafuyu cleaves through multiple chairs of the plane. The clairvoyant gets hold of Mafuyu's handgun and fires off some defensive shots, but they're gracefully deflected by Mafuyu as if he was performing for Yuri on Ice. Shin realizes he's at the disadvantage here, and he has no choice but to rely on his trump card, acknowledging that if Shin can't even win against this teenager, he'll never stop being a burden on Sakamoto. Shin resolves and activates Future Sight, immediately turning the tables and catching up to Mafuyu's agility, countering every one of his attacks perfectly as momentum begins to shift towards Shin's direction. Flashing back to before the two of them embarked on the plane, Shin requested Sakamoto not come to his aid at any point during this exam, wanting to make the commitment that he'll be able to fight and win on his own. Sakamoto obliges, but tells Shin not to fail if that's the case. Something that only inspires Shin further, who declares not only is he gonna pass, he's making it to the top of the class. And that promise is why Shin can't hold back, even if Mafuyu is just a kid. There's too much at stake here. This flashback contextualizes Shin and Sakamoto's separate adventures during this whole arc, but it also sheds some light on Sakamoto's earlier action of holding on to that second bullet, as ultimately, it shows that despite Shin wanting Sakamoto to accept him as an equal, whether it being subconscious or not, Sakamoto himself doesn't even truly believe Shin can pass on his own. I think, deep down, at some level, Shin knows this though, and it's why he fights so hard this arc to be independent. For a 14-year-old, Mafuyu is highly intelligent and quite experienced in combat. He's able to deduce Shin must be reading his moves after only a couple of exchanges of blows. And it only takes another short while after that for Mafuyu to change his strategy entirely from precise attacks to wild frenzies, slicing everything around Shin and in Mafuyu's way. But Shin still manages to keep up, once again tossing Mafuyu back with a kick. However, that quick thinker grabs a hold of Shin's leg and holds him still to try and attack that way. But unfortunately for Mafuyu, his teenage angst was way too loud for Shin not to hear. The clairvoyant was already way ahead of Mafuyu's well thought out plan because, well, it was thought out, snapping his ankle blade off at the stem with the back of Shin's gun. Putting the teenager in submission with a gun to his temple, Shin swipes the 3 golden bullets from Mafuyu's pocket. Admitting defeat and losing in disgrace, Mafuyu demands Shin finish the job and kill him. Which, alright Kemosabe, let's relax a little bit. Not only is it against Shin's family rules to kill, he's not gonna kill a child over some stupid test that, at the end of the day, is only a means to an end for information on Slur. But what Shin views as valiant, Mafuyu views as embarrassing and immature, bursting into tears over his loss and calling Shin immature for not doing the proper assassin thing. And his tantrum just keeps getting worse, so in genuine concern for his well-being, Shin offers him a compliment, saying that for a 14-year-old, you know, Mafuyu, you got some pretty damn good talent as an assassin. And here, I gotta give props to Yuto Suzuki for capturing that perfect entitled as teenager perspective, because how in the world does this little jackass turn the compliment around into, oh, you know, I do get that a lot. I really must be talented. I don't need you to tell me that, which is just, it's very telling to what Suzuki thinks of the next generation. Mafuyu confides in Shin why he can't let himself fail this exam like this. And it's ultimately because his main goal at the JCC is to make all the connections necessary to get recruited into the order. And with this short moment of understanding, Hiding Guy tries to spring out from the cupboard and steal Mafuyu's bullets, but Shin shuts that coward down on sight with a barrage of punches, using this cool moment as a teaching experience to explain to Mafuyu that if he really wants to get into the order, he doesn't need trivial things like connections or reputation. All he really needs to make it in that world is incredible abilities of freak-like nature. Taking pity on the 14-year-old murderer, Shin flicks Mafuyu over a golden bullet, showing how, despite the large gap in power between them, both Sakamoto and Shin are capable of being someone the next generation can look up to. Shin turns to walk away all dramatically, but just like Sakamoto and his blue-haired protege, Mafuyu speaks up to try and stop Shin. Shin sighs, and all cool-like tells Mafuyu he doesn't need to thank him, but in all actuality, thank you is not in Mafuyu's vocabulary. He just wants Shin to swap out the bullet he gave him with one of the other ones that has less blood on it.